Studying as a cardiology fellow can be a lot, and with very little time available, I know I need a system that can be quick and predictable, so today I'm going to break down exactly how I use RemNote to do just that. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. In case you're new here, my name is Lux, I'm a cardiology fellow, and today I'm going to break down exactly how I study as a cardiology fellow from step A to Z using RemNote as kind of my go-to tool. Now, if you're not familiar with RemNote, I've made a full video deep dive in exactly what it is, all the features, but think of RemNote as kind of a combination between a flashcard tool and an outline document tool, and there's so much more that I can do, but just a nice clean way for me to take notes in a very simple format if I wanted to do it as an outline, or turn my notes into things like flashcards where I can easily review and have it all in one place. And today I'm going to share with you both kind of what my home base looks like in RemNote of how I kind of organize everything, as well as my 4-step process of learning anything in cardiology with very little time that you can duplicate in any aspect of your medical journey. And while most of the tools in RemNote that I use are absolutely free, there are some pro features that I do highly recommend. So if you want to actually give RemNote a try completely free with all its pro features, click down the link in the description. They'll actually give you a month free so you can go ahead and test it out. But without further ado, let's jump into my study flow. Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you guys is kind of what I consider to be my home page or my home base of RemNote as a cardiology fellow. I have more aspects of RemNote that are more about my personal life. As you guys can see, I have a folder as my personal life that has more of my to-dos and projects that I'm working on, but then I have one specifically for being a cardiology fellow. This is where I store all of the things that I learned within the field of cardiology, and also the main place that I go to when I have to review and remind myself of things. And so just to kind of give you guys an overview of what this looks like to give some inspiration, it's not that complicated, kind of encouraging that if you do use RemNote or use any tool, keep it simple. And so I really have kind of 5 buckets that things go into. One of them is kind of a to-do list in case I just want to have a quick reminder of all the things that I need to do as a cardiology fellow, whether it's need to review a specific topic or certain chapters or apply to an email of somebody from like the admin staff, whatever it may be. My life as a cardiology fellow is put into there, and it has checkboxes. As you can see, if I click here, it'll give me kind of the different projects that I'm working on, the different topics that I may have to do for a presentation on, as well as extra presentations or to-do items. And as I check them off, I can go ahead and quickly delete these if I needed to. But the next few buckets are really the most important part. This is kind of gets into our 4-step process of how I help evaluate, learn, store, and review information as a cardiology fellow. And so the first thing that I'm gonna have to do is actually understand what I need to learn. There's so much within cardiology that I have to have some structured way of going to the next thing. And so the first thing that I usually do is anything that comes to mind that you're not good at that, or you have known nothing about that, or know not enough, I kind of put into this obtain bucket. And so you can see if I click topics to look up, it includes a bunch of things that I, at one point, felt like I need to look into more or understand better. So then when I manage a patient independently, I just want to have a full kind of deep dive into it. So for example, one of the things that I wanted to look at is skip lesions, critical aortic stenosis, looking into the entire procedure of a TAVR, a maze procedure, looking into a condition called HALT, which is a valvular process. And some of these are kind of more basic overviews, so coronary anomalies. I started this one, which I'll kind of demonstrate for the rest of this episode in this video, on the concept of cardiac masses and imaging, because right now I'm on an echo rotation, so I really want to kind of review all the different modalities of evaluating what a mass is if I see it on a heart picture. Is it normal? Is it abnormal? How do I know what kind of mass it is? And so I'll share with this as an example. We'll just kind of do this live, but this is my one place where I store everything. So as I'm going through this list, I will have new things that come up, and as I'm going through this list, I will have things like ideally this cardiac mass that is taken care of this week, and then I will be able to move into my next bucket, which is kind of like my storing bucket. Not everything needs me to immediately go back to it, but I want to make sure I have all of my information in one place, kind of like a second brain process, where if I learn it once, I want to have an easy go-to way of refreshing. So any lectures and any reading that I do are going to be in this bucket. And so if I have a professor or an attending give us a conference or a lecture, I'll put those in here. So these are just a few examples of the ones that I've stored in RemNote. If I take something from my obtain bucket and I read about it through like a review article or something, then I go ahead and store it here. So these are just a few of the topics that I've reviewed. For example, I was reading about colchicine and cardiovascular health, and these are all the notes that I've taken on the concept. I'll even show you how I did this super quickly. If I'm reading a specific article that's like an actual study, then I'll go ahead and put those into here. And then if there's something that doesn't necessarily go, maybe it's just a Pearl or like a formula that I wanted to know for later, then I'll just put it in a miscellaneous bucket. And there's areas for improvements of how I store this, but this works for now. And then finally is kind of my review question aspect of it. If I'm doing board questions, or if I miss something that is a topic that I want to make sure I don't ever miss again, then I will turn them into the formal questions, and I'll show you guys how examples of how that is, but I'll put them in here. And so, for example, if I go to things like imaging, then I'll see all of the imaging questions that I may have missed, or topics within imaging that I may have missed. and echo, and those will be there. If I go to cath, same thing. If I do general cardiology, which will have the most, it's even taking a second to load up, then these are all the things that I want to make sure that I remember, and these are kind of little guides and references. But all of these, if you are unfamiliar with RemNote, are essentially flashcards. So if I wanted to do a flashcard on this, it would basically show me this, and then I would have to answer this. Or if I wanted to know what the criteria was for doing anticoagulation on a valve, it would show me this, and then it would show me this as the answer. And so that's the nice thing about RemNote is, again, everything can look like an outline, but it can also quickly be turned into a flashcard. And that is my basic structure of my homepage. This is going to be super helpful, especially this last tab, for me to do things like board studying, because as a cardiologist, you have to take tons of board exams, which is fun. And so I am storing anything that I miss within the topics that it goes into. So when I have to take my echo boards, I just go into my imaging and do all those questions. When I want to study for my general cardiology boards, I'll just do my general cardiology questions. And so this is my nice, simple way. And the last one is kind of a need to sort. So if there's anything that I have not kind of moved into a specific topic, but maybe I've taken notes on, which happens to be a lot, at some time when I have some free time, I will go ahead and clean that up and put it there. But this is kind of my homepage, and that's going to set us up for the rest of this episode where we talk about the 4-step process on how I learn anything within the field of cardiology. So before we do kind of a deep dive in RemNote, let's talk about those 4 phases. So step number 1 is the process of evaluating exactly what you need to learn or what needs to be learned at some point. Step number 2 is actually going through the learning phase and actually trying to understand that material, whether it be through a lecture, a review article, a video, whatever it may be. Step number 3 is the process of storing. Not everything needs to be reviewed or turned into a flashcard. Some things just need to be put aside so you can reference at a moment's notice. But other things are concepts that you want to have enough repetition through that they become kind of like second nature to you. So having to differentiate where certain information goes for me is super important. And step number 4 is actually the process of reviewing and have a very simple and structured way of doing so. So starting with step number 1, which is the process of obtaining, I have an obtain folder, which I kind of already shared about, but just having a system where you're reminding yourself on a weekly basis of all the things that you felt uncomfortable with. A great place to start are topics that you have already kind of learned throughout the week that you know you're still uneasy about if somebody was to ask you again. And if there's information that you're already forgetting within days of learning it, those are perfect things to say, maybe I didn't get a full deep enough dive, or I need to do a deeper dive myself and add those to it. So if there are patients that I'm taking care of in the ICU, or if I'm looking up an image of a patient and I can read their echo, but I probably don't know their entirety of their condition very well, I'll add this to this list. It's not that these things are topics that I don't know very well, but topics I want to become as close to an expert in those by reading 1 or 2 review articles. And we'll talk about in the future phases of how I do that to make sure that if I ever have a patient come into my clinic with these things, I feel more than competent of at least managing it or knowing where I can go back to in my library of information to remind myself what those are. And so having a simple process of saying, especially things you've learned that you don't feel comfortable with, those should go in an obtain folder of some sorts. And then if you come across topics, whether it can be go through a book chapter. So if you're in a medicine resident, for example, or you're in med school and you're going through your OB-GYN rotation, go through a higher yield review source that you're going to be using for your exams and just look at the topic chapters. And if there's specific things, and maybe all of them, that you feel uncomfortable with, go ahead and add those to your obtain folder. It's a simple way that you can do this for your lectures if you're just in your normal preclinical courses, is to look in your syllabi and say, what topics will I be learning, and put those in an obtain folder. So that way you know what topics you need to be mastering. This is what I consider to be equivalent of a hit list during my journey as a cardiology trainee that I need to master by the time that I am done or close to graduation. And so my process is simple. If I feel like there's something that I hear about just momentarily and I know I don't know it very well, I'll just quickly grab my phone, because RemNote works digitally on my phone as well as it does on my desktop, and I'll just add those to this bucket. If there's anything that comes up, whether I'm reading an article and I read about something, I'll just put it there. And while this process is simple, it's also extremely important, because I just need to have a framework of what needs to be left to be learned, and there's always going to be something on this list. But the more I fail to add it, I am going to likely have a situation where I knew I had a moment where I wanted to review that information, but if I don't add it here, I may just forget to review it or add it to things that need to be reviewed, and it won't be till the next time I'm faced with that topic, which could be a moment where a patient needs me to know that. So having this quick process where I can say, crap, Lux, you don't know that very well. Put it in your obtain folder. Don't expect you're going to remember to put it later. Just do it now on your phone, and then it's there for me to refer to later. So step number 2 is the process of actually learning the information. So if we take, for example, one of the topics that's in here, which is my cardiac masses, it is a topic that I need to learn for being a good echo reader. I kind of already started this process where I found an article that maybe I want to go to, and this is a nice example of saying that you don't always have to do the entire phase at one go, especially when you're kind of more in a flexible flexible form of training like I am, where you're a resident or you're a fellow and you have topics that you need to know, but the topics don't necessarily be mastered by a quiz or a test day. It just needs to be mastered sometime during your training. And so I didn't have time to actually deep dive into the actual topic, but I found an article that looked promising. And so the nice thing about RemNote is that you can not only put links in, you can put pictures, but if you use the Pro feature, you can also upload. So for example, this article right here, this is the PDF to it, but I don't want to have to keep going back and forth and taking notes. And so the nice thing is I can go ahead and actually just upload the actual PDF file. But now after uploading it, this entire 18-page PDF that I want to review is kind of put right to the side. And it's not just there for reference. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. If I'm reading something in here, if I want to highlight something and turn it into a piece of information I want to remember, let's say this first paragraph, for example. RemNote nicely gives you the ability to say, go ahead and highlight it. You can also kind of summarize things. It also just gives you the ability of turning that paragraph into an automatic flashcard. So that's really cool. For the purposes of this example, I'm just going to highlight, and it automatically kind of saves my highlights as if it was in kind of a copy paste format. So if I just go Control V or whatever it is, Command V for Mac users, it will take this highlight and just go ahead and copy it into my document. And the nice thing is if I'm here later on where I'm on page like 7 and I'm like, crap, where did I get this text from? It will quickly just, as soon as I click it, take me back to that highlight. It's really nice if you're reading studies and review articles, if you're just taking nitbits through it and then you come back to those to write like a research paper or a presentation, you can click on those links and it'll take you back to the document so you can get a better context of what's being talked about. And then the last kind of method that I like using in addition to flashcards and image occlusion is to really just make simplistic outline flashcards. So for example, if I was reading something and I highlighted it, maybe I just want to make my own kind of questions from it. So I may highlight something like this, which is talking about what a fenestrated AV is, and I would just write that into a form of question. And the nice thing about RemNote is I can just quickly do a quick forward arrow twice, and anything written after that becomes kind of its own mini flashcard. And so just like here, I've just done fenestrated aortic valves, and then I've taken and copied this paragraph into it as the answer. But this is my process of actually learning the information, and I'm actually trying to learn this information as I'm reading through this document because I want this to ultimately become Lakshya's organized, simplistic model of what cardiac masses are, and not just a big document with paragraphs that I have to relearn if I was to come back to it. The most important part is that this is something that is likely going to take me a few sittings. It's probably not going to be a 20-minute quickly learn kind of concept. It's 18 pages first of all, and if at any point I realize that this document is not good enough for the topic or too involved, I'll just find another article or a video that's going to help me learn this better and then add that to this big outline that I've created. Now, step number 3 is storing this information. I don't want at some point to just have a big list of everything I've reviewed and just in one place. And so you have to kind of be a little bit focused on being organizational or having a process initially, so that way it's much easier to come back to things. And so as I'm learning, sometimes I try to ask myself one question is like, what topics would this easily come back into? And the nice thing about RemNote is that you can make things into references or tags where I can look up something like AFib or CAD and find all the topics I've written within those topics. I just have to tag them as such. It's very similar as like the tags within Anki. Things like Quizlet have their own stuff. And so one of the ways you can do this is you can just quickly go into the title and just tag it. So if you do 2 hashtags, this will go ahead and tag it to whatever you want. Now I have tons that I've used before, but cardiac masses doesn't necessarily fit within one of them. So it may fit within echo. And so I have an echo tag. And so I'm just going to put it within there. And then so when I'm creating my tags, I may think of things like echoes or imaging. And so let's see if I have an imaging tag quite yet, and doesn't look like it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and create one. And so now this is going to have a tag for echo and imaging. And then I'm just gonna add one more for things like masses in case that's what I think of looking for later on. And so now I can see under this tab, I have 3 tags added to this. So if I ever typed in topic of echoes or imaging or mass, then it would show me anything in this outline for sure, as well as any other outlines that had one of these tags, this would show up. Now the next thing after putting tags and references is actually moving things and organizing them after I'm done. So if I just say, for example, that I've actually finished reviewing things on this cardiac mass topic, I can just go ahead and take it out of the topics to look for and just move it into my lectures and reading. And then I can choose within that what I want to move it as. So let's just say it's going to be something that I'm going to consider that I read about, like through a review article. If it was something that I had obtained through a lecture that somebody had given to me, I'd put it here. If it was something that I learned by reading a study, then I would put it here. Most of the things I would put in the reading aspect with any pertinent tags that it has. And again, this is really nice because you can go ahead and just kind of go into the sidebar and type in anything. So I can type in mass and it's going to show me this right here, and then likely it's going to show me all of the tags or all the documents that have mass tagged into them. For our purposes, it's just this one. But if I did the same thing for imaging or echo, it would show me all the documents, including the cardiac masses one, plus anything else, which is really nice. And as kind of a teaser, as you can see, it allows me to do any flashcards on this tag. So if I typed in imaging and I was on my echo rotation, which I'm on, I could do all the flashcards tagged with topics on echoes for anything I have. If I was on my cath rotation EP, I could do flashcards on that topic. It really allows you to kind of hone in on one topic that you need to learn. And so as you're adding information, as you're adding content to these tags over time, it grows the amount of questions you can ask without having to move things around like an Anki deck, for example. So it makes things really easy of just asking specific questions over time. Now the final step is the aspect of review. Now we'll get into how I do flashcards, which is pretty simple, but sometimes you may realize that maybe there's a topic that you've forgotten. You go back into your second brain and you go through something like your reading. And let's say I'm looking at this topic of Lp(a), which is an important topic in the idea of preventative cardiology and CAD. And so some of these things are not flashcards, right? So if I wanted, as I'm reviewing them, let's say I'm like, okay, I shouldn't forget that in the future. Let's just make that into a flashcard. The nice thing is that I can just go ahead and take some of these things into flashcards by just doing kind of a double tap, clicking enter, and now as you can see, anything with this arrow pointing down, anything below it is kind of a multi-step flashcard. So what that means is that if this is the question, it's going to ask me each of these as if it's an individual one. So we click preview right here, we can see that it's going to take the main line as a question, and then it's going to ask me one of the bullet points as kind of an answer if I know it or not. And so easily sometimes what I can do is I can just transition what I wrote up here and type it as a question to help me kind of understand what I'm going for. So I can talk about how does number of repeats affect Lp(a) risk, something like that. And then turn that into a flashcard by just doing either 2 arrows forward, which just makes a nice simple back forward flashcard, or if you add an enter to it, it makes kind of a multi-step flashcard. So all of your bullet points are then an individual question or an answer to the question, which I like more because it allows me to ask more things and then really differentiate which one I don't know out of those 3 items, for example. So that is the kind of first part of reviewing, is if I'm going back to a topic, reviewing it, and realize, man, I really should know that, and I haven't made that into a flashcard, I'll quickly do so, as well as kind of add any tags that I feel like are relevant. And the second part is actually doing the questions themselves. Now, as a cardiology fellow, I can't be stuck doing Anki, E, or RemNote for an hour a day. I just don't have the time. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll pick a certain amount of questions that I'll do instead, and then just go into my question and board prep area and go through here. Or again, if I was on my EP rotation, for example, but maybe I want to do anything beyond just the questions that I put within my EP folder, I can just go and type in within search electrophysiology, and it will show me any flashcard that I've tagged as electrophysiology, including these ones. But I usually will do a certain amount of questions per day just to keep it simple. So for the process here, I can choose to go into one of these individual ones, or if I wanted to, I can just do an entire kind of flashcard thing where I can just go into here and just do flashcards, practice with spaced repetition, and then it would start showing me questions. So here you can see here's a question that comes from my EP folder about the different pacemaker modes. And so I can go ahead and click show answer. It's going to show me the different kind of things. It even gives me some different things from their AI near tutor in case I wanted to use it. But if I didn't remember these 4 answers, I could just click forget, just like Anki, very similar. Now it's going to ask me about a question about critical care. And I can do these, and this is an example of what a multi-step question looks like. So if there's multiple things involved, I can say the ones that I didn't get correctly just to help me understand. And it's going to give me some mnemonics to memorize things potentially, but I'm just going to say that I partially recall this. But usually my goal is to do about 10 to 20 questions, or no more than 10 to 15 minutes of review. And that's simply enough time for me to do enough questions within my question block that I can feel like I'm always making progress. I know there's tons of flashcards I have not touched, but again, that's not the goal. There's no board exam that I have in a week or a quiz coming up. I just need to get a little bit better at cardiology every day. I need to learn a little bit more. I need to review a little bit more, and that helps boost up my knowledge. And I want to do this without becoming a process that I dread. And so this system of understanding and evaluating what I need to learn, of actually learning it, organizing it in a very simplistic format, and then reviewing it in a very simplistic format is my 4-step process that I use as a cardiology fellow, that I use RemNote for, and it works extremely well. Now I know that some of you guys are watching this video because you're just interested in what it looks like to study as a cardiology fellow, and some of you guys are probably understanding how you can use RemNote for your own medical journey. So Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a framework of how you can learn anything in medicine through a very simplistic 4-step process. But just having a simple system that you can easily go and replicate is really the most important thing. I think RemNote does a really good job of allowing you to put everything in one place a little bit better, actually a lot better than Anki. And I'm a big Anki fan. So if you're interested in checking out RemNote, I'll put a link down below in the description that will also give you a free month trial of all the pro features, including uploading an entire document and being able to annotate it, which I think is super, super nice. And if you have questions about RemNote or specific features or concepts that you want me to include in future episodes and videos, go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below. But also let me know what from this video did you guys feel that you would use in your own kind of day-to-day studying in medicine? What things probably wouldn't work for you? I'm really curious, so let me know in the comment section down below. And then if you did enjoy this episode, then check out this full episode of exactly how I would use RemNote as a medical student to just help me get the best grades possible. But as always, my friends, hopefully I was a little help to you guys on your journey. As always, thank you so much for being a part of mine. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.